Hey everyone, welcome to Ajay Discusses Movies, a show in which I discuss movies both old and new. Today we're discussing a new movie that just dropped in the theaters this past week, and that movie is titled Lee Cronin's The Mummy, directed by Lee Cronin. This film was released this past weekend. This is Lee Cronin's third directed film. It is a follow-up to the 2023 film Evil Dead Rise. What is this movie about? This movie is about a family whose daughter gets kidnapped in Egypt. The father is there in Egypt and she gets kidnapped. He's trying to locate the local authorities, get word as to where she's located, but it is to no avail. A few years later, the family is in New Mexico. Mother and father are in New Mexico with two new children as they get a call from the Egyptian government saying that their daughter has been found. However, she has been mummified, and the family decides to take the mummified state of the daughter back to Albuquerque, New Mexico, as chaos, hilarity, and horror ensue. So, I did watch this movie a little less than 48 hours ago on Sunday, and I did take notes on the movie. I did. I took notes on this movie, if you can see it, if the camera will allow you to see it. Usually I put it on my notes app and try to glance over here and there just to get my thoughts in order, but today I had to, because general thoughts on this movie, I truly disliked this movie. I really did. In fact, I would say that this is honestly one of the worst movies I've discussed, not only on Ajay Discusses Movies, but on Ajay and Nathan Discuss Movies. Honestly, this is easily one of the worst movies I've seen. We'll get into the negatives and we'll talk about spoilers, so obviously this will be a spoiler review. I'll enter into a timestamp as to when spoilers will start or when they'll end, so you will have that. But yeah, this is easily one of the worst movies I have seen thus far on the channel. Honestly, I would much rather watch Jerry Seinfeld's Unfrosted over this movie.
It's got a certain tang.
Ooh, that's a good name.
If Jerry were here, Jerry, get on the pod.
Jerry, get on the pod.
Jerry, I know he's savage. Come defend your movie. Yeah. If Jerry were here, I think he would make some, horrible statement about what's going on in the Middle East, and then
if a gun was pointed to my head and I had to choose one movie, I would choose Jerry Seinfeld's Unfrosted over this movie, because at least with Jerry Seinfeld's Unfrosted, the pacing is a little bit better. It takes less time to finish the movie. And there are admirable parts to that movie that are quite endearing for me to return to watch it. Even though Unfrosted is a bad movie, it's pretty bad. At least with that movie, it does not take you into a suspension of disbelief to the point where you are actively side-eyeing the movie and questioning the judgment of the director to the extent as this movie takes. So, before I get into my negatives, before I get into the ridiculous plot contrivances within this film, I want to start off with the positives, right? Let's get into the positives. I thought Calamawy did an amazing job. Hopefully I'm saying her name right, but she did an impeccable job in this movie. Definitely Hollywood, if you are interested, please get her for more roles and to get her in your movies, because she is just electric in this movie. To me, I felt like she was the only character in this movie that I had any interest in delving into, that I had any interest in not only just delving into, but just supporting and rooting for. Calamawy, I thought, did an amazing job. She was in Rami a few years ago. I think she was a series regular on Rami. But yeah, she was incredible in this movie. Same as Elghety. I thought they both Mays did impeccable in this movie. And without them, I think this movie would fall flat on its face without the acting of those two individuals. what I also enjoyed about this movie is that they do have some respect and reverence for Egyptian culture and for the country of Egypt. There are times in which I'm watching the movie and the look of Egypt looks rather similar to the look of New Mexico. I don't know if it was purposefully done or if it was by design, but it definitely felt as if there was some modicum of respect for Egypt in this movie. A lot of times when Hollywood depicts the Middle East or countries within Africa, especially within Northern Africa, they put an orange filter or yellow filter over it, and it looks rather dystopian. This didn't feel like that. It felt like they had some modicum of respect for Egypt within the movie. Now, in terms of positives, that's where it sort of starts and ends. Because this movie is filled with parts that I truly just didn't understand. So let's get into the negatives right now. Negatives, the entire family in this movie is so bad. Not only is their acting so bad in this movie, but there's a lack of a chemistry between both the mother and father. There's a lack of a fatherly dynamic between the father and the children. We'll get into spoilers later on, but this entire family was just impossible to support. This entire family, all the way from the mother and father, all the way from the grandma to the children. They were just undescribably horrible when it came to building likable characters that I could watch for a 2-hour and 15-minute runtime. That brings up the runtime. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. You can definitely trim 45 minutes from this movie, and it would be serviceable. It would be acceptable. It wouldn't be great. It wouldn't be a great film, but it would be an acceptable film. That was also an issue with the movie. Was just the ridiculous runtime. And the last, but certainly not the least, just the sequencing of events that happen in this movie and how it makes you feel as if the director is just taking advantage of your suspension of disbelief. Listen, we've talked about instances in which directors try to take advantage of your suspension of disbelief, right? During our In Time review that I discussed with Nathan, we talked about how the car crash that happened really makes you want to throw a knife against the screen because it is so illogical. And when Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried go through that car crash, they should be dead at that point. Right, we discuss parts and moments throughout film in which the director takes advantage of your disbelief. But through this entire movie, and this is where we get into spoilers, so spoilers enter into this time frame to avoid being spoiled. There are instances in which this director, Lee Cronin, wants to take advantage of the fact that he's in a horror movie and wants to make sure that you're well aware you're in a horror movie, to the point where it is to the detriment of its own film. So let's get into certain parts in this movie that truly made no sense to me. So the family goes into Egypt to take their mummified daughter back to New Mexico. Question: why? Why do that, right? If you are bringing your mummified daughter from Egypt to New Mexico in that state where she's all bogged out and possessed and crazy, wouldn't that raise a few questions by the U.S. Borders and Customs? Wouldn't that raise a few questions by people that are also flying in that same plane? If they're flying economy, wouldn't that raise some suspicions as to, hey, maybe this is not the right state in which we should bring our daughter back to New Mexico? Maybe the fact that she's mummified will disrupt the day-to-day activities that our family provides on a day-to-day nature? I mean, listen, right from the get-go, we are hit with, hey, turn your brain off and just enjoy. And listen, there are times in which I get that, right? If you're watching Evil Dead 2, I'm aware of that. If you're watching films of that nature that sort of lean into horror and comedy, I'm well aware that it's fine to do that. But at no point did it feel as if it was taking advantage or insulting your intelligence while watching that movie. While watching Evil Dead 2, you watch that movie thinking, this is amazing, Bruce Campbell's acting is stellar, but Sam Raimi does have respect for the movie-going audience, and he does have respect for their time. This didn't feel like that. It felt like a slap in the face to the people that wanted to actually watch a fun film that leaned on its campiness and horror. So that's the number one issue when it came to watching this film, is how did they go from Egypt to New Mexico with a mummified daughter without people saying, hey, don't do that. So a few hours later, a few moments later, what happens is that the daughter, who's in her mummified state, essentially kills the grandma. And the scene in which the grandma gets killed is very funny. It's basically just her being torn at the seams by a pack of wolves, and it's funny, it's hilarious. That I will give a positive to, because I did like the humor attached with the horror at times within the movie. But they decide to have an open casket funeral within the home, in their family home. And the mummified daughter is still there. Why? I mean, why not just call the police? Why not call the ambulance? Why not call for medical attention to this matter? If you know your daughter killed your own grandma or killed your own mother, why not just call the officials? Listen, I'm willing to let a lot of things slide in movies, but when it gets to the point where you're actively scratching your head and side-eyeing the movie while watching it, I'm sorry, it just made no sense to me. So they decide to have the open casket funeral in the home. And when that does happen, obviously insanity ensues from there. The other daughter, the now normal daughter, then gets possessed by this mummified daughter, and you see this scene in which, her teeth are just out of scrambles, very similar to Bring Her Back from last year. Even Freddy got fingered in 2001. Call back to that. But when you see that happen, she gets new teeth. How? How does she get new teeth? Is she just chomping at the bit? Like, what? And before all that happens, before the grandma dies, there's sticky goo under the carpet that the father finds when she's going through her crazy attacks on her grandma and on her mother, but it's never brought back. It's just there. Why have that scene in the movie if you're not gonna address it later on? Why? Like, why have that scene in there if you're not going to talk about it later on and the significance of the goo later on? Whatever. Anyways, so spoiling the end of the movie, the father decides to sacrifice himself for his daughter to essentially be free. He gets the videotape by May Elghety's character. That's not by May Elghety, but by May Calamawy's character, that says that this lady essentially possessed her by barfing into her mouth or something. I don't know. Crazy. The fact that they had VHS there as well, crazy as well. I mean, who has VHS in the year 2026? If it's set in the modern day, why have it on a VHS tape where it's this eerie, spooky thing and expect people to have also VHS recorders at their home as well? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. But it is revealed that the father decides to sacrifice his own life to save his daughter. And what the family decides to do is that they decide to enact revenge on the lady who possessed her daughter by going all of the way to Egypt to essentially have the possessed father kill the lady who possessed the daughter. What? That entire scene was crazy. Like, you're willing to fly all the way to Egypt, go to a jail cell, fly a plane, a commercial plane from New Mexico to Egypt with the possessed dad. Like, what is the possessed dad doing on the plane? What is he doing there? And then you go to the Egyptian jail cell. The mother has to fool the lady in the jail cell by dressing up in scrubs outfits or by dressing up in a nursing outfit. How does she get the nursing outfit? How did that conversation take place? How was she able to convince the actual nurse at that jail that, hey, I'm going to pull a prank on this lady and have the father come in? Aren't there guards at the jail cells? That entire montage, that entire scene was so out of left field for me. So, anyways, those were some of the few, if not many, moments in the film where I actively questioned what I was watching. Now, if you go on Letterboxd and you see the reviews, you're going to see a lot of positive reviews for this film, which I truly don't understand. When I watched this film, I was like, okay, this movie is going to get ripped to shreds, rightfully so. And then I saw all these individuals support it. And not only support it, but suggest people watch the movie. I'm like, is this an elaborate prank? Is this a prank pulled by the Letterboxd community to essentially make people watch the film? I don't know. I just think that people are way too partial towards horror movies nowadays. And I think we're entering into a through line where there are fans of horror movies, and people that are fans of horror movies will only watch horror movies. And then there are fans of films that are able to accurately and actively critique movies that border on insanity. And I think this movie is right at that point where it's essentially an insane film. Now, granted, there are individuals that were critical of this movie, and I want to shout them out real quick. Red Letter Media was right in their critique of this movie. I watched their review, I think 2 days ago, and right when it dropped, because I was like, surely, like, they gotta be honest about this film, right? So, kudos to Red Letter Media. Kudos to Jeremy Johns. I didn't really watch that many reviews in regards to this movie, but those were the ones that stuck out to me. I mean, they're right in their assessment. And I think now more than ever, we need to be honest about films that take advantage of the time of the audience member. And I think this film is one of the myriad of examples that essentially take advantage of the audience member's graciousness and their ability to sit through a film. I mean, listen, I wanted to like this movie. It's a mummy movie. It has Lee Cronin in it. Lee Cronin did pretty good with Evil Dead Rise. And I understand what he was trying to go for with this movie. I mean, there are shades of Seven in this movie. There are shades of The Poltergeist, shades of Exorcist. But with those films, it didn't take advantage of the audience time, and it greatly valued the characters that were within those movies. And they were able to depict those characters in favorable circumstances, but also allow you to be empathetic about their situation. And in this regard, in this movie, it just wasn't able to capture that. So, I don't know. I mean, I wanted a lot from this movie, right? But I will safely say this movie is probably the worst movie I've watched this year so far. This is worse than The Bride. Because at least with The Bride, the acting is at least pretty good in that movie. Given with what they were given, I felt the acting was good in that movie. With Christian Bale, Jake Gyllenhaal, Peter Sarsgaard, Jesse Buckley, I thought they all gave pretty good performances. In this movie, not so much. And honestly, I'm able to watch moments of that film and laugh not just at the film, but with the film. When you see Brain Attack that scene in particular, it is tough not to laugh with the film because you know exactly what the tone of that movie is trying to go for. This film felt otherwise, and because of that, it is going to be, I will crown it as one of the worst films I've watched on this channel so far, if not the worst film that I've watched on this channel so far. If I'm wrong, let me know. What are your thoughts on this movie? I want to hear a solid defense on this movie. If you truly like this film, please defend it, because there are times in which I will defend pretty bad films that often get mocked at and get shat on for. I mean, I enjoyed the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and a lot of people didn't like that movie, but I enjoyed it, so I want to hear your defense on this movie. How can you sit through 2 hours and 15 minutes of this film on rewatch? I want to hear that defense. But anyways, that is it for today's discussion. The bookshop has been updated with The Sea and Poison. It is a Shūsaku Endō film, book, not film, book. It is in the bookshop right now. Highly suggest you go and read it. Other than that, I don't know what I'll discuss next week. I know Mother Mary is coming out this week. I'm excited for that film. I may just watch an old film and just call it a blast from the past, because after this movie, I need a palate cleanser. I need to be reminded that there are good films out there that depict gratuity to a level of this extent. And yeah, I don't know. Probably will go for a blast from the past next week, but don't be surprised if it's Mother Mary. Anyways, guys, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next week. Peace. See y'all.